back to Common Ground, an inside look at Suffolk County. I'm your host, Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Now, on this side of the program, we've got Pamela Julian from the Boston League of Women Voters, and we've got Cindy Diggs, who I've known like forever, from Peace Boston. And we're going to talk about the legislative process. We're going to talk about the importance of voting, but we're also going to talk about peace and harmony in our communities, and that's really what we need to have going on these days, folks. So without any further ado, ladies, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Since I've known you for 100 years, I'm going to start with Ms. Julian. Talk to me about the Boston League for Women Voters. What is that set up to do?
Actually, the Boston League of Women Voters is the oldest league in the nation. And
Is that a fact? Okay.
the League of Women Voters, we were the radicals
Okay.
to fight for the right to vote.
Okay.
So
Nice.
the women chained themselves to the White House fence, were incarcerated,
Wow.
but because it was an unjust law, Sheriff, right?
Yeah.
So we fought for that right to vote, and we've only had it not even 100 years.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, when you think about it, you know, in the Voting Rights Act in the 60s, it's nuts to me. But how appropriate that it would come out of Boston or Massachusetts.
Absolutely.
I mean, the state is known for these kind of initiatives. But drill down a little bit and tell folks a little bit more about the agency and what it's set up to do.
Right. Well, what our key role is to educate and register voters who are eligible, and also work with law officials, legislators at the municipal level, in particular the Boston League. We observe the Boston City Council. We are actually the Boston City Council observer.
Okay.
And we hope to be talking about that on a regular basis every week, because I actually personally, as the president of the Boston League, attend the hearings and meet with legislators to really find out what it is that they're working on, but also to find out what the constituents' needs are.
Right.
And that's how Cindy and I have really connected, because as Cindy said, peace is political.
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, our citizens don't understand the value in connecting, or not enough. Because based on, evidenced on the low voter registration and also the low voter turnout, Massachusetts unfortunately ranked an F for voter registration in the country. And we do have pending legislation right now, and we hope that it does pass to improve our voter registration systems. But what we can do in the meantime is work with Cindy and people in the community, in neighborhoods across the city, to educate citizens why it is important not only to register to vote, but to vote in every election.
Well, you know, I'm going to come back to you on that in a second, because I've also got this pet peeve about the absence of civics in our schools. And when you eliminate civics, or what was called social studies 100 years ago when I went to school, that's the elimination of what community is all about, what government is built to do, and the power of the vote, you know. And so to remove civics along with physical education and the arts, I think it's a travesty. But let me switch over to you and talk to us about Peace Boston.
Well, we have been involved in voting for many years. I've always hosted a hip-hop vote-a-thon, so that's why I paired up with the league, so that we could get more education out there, because we know the work that we do with promoting peace, it's very political. You know, if you don't have your information in the right ears, then, you know, it falls on people who are responsible for making these decisions, and maybe they don't have the issues of violence in their communities. So we've been involving the politicians a lot this past year with the creation of the Peace Collaborative, which is all of the peace organizations in the city, along with 17 other organizations that address youth work in the city of Boston.
So let me ask you this very expansive question, and I apologize for it, because it could be just like kind of way out there, but from your perch, the difference between urban and suburban communities when it comes to violence, there's a marked difference there. What brings that about? I mean, you see in communities of color or in urban centers a higher level of violence than you do in some of the suburban communities. Where's the difference? What brings that about?
Opportunity. I think that the suburban young people have a lot more opportunity, where their parents can afford to put them into programming, and that's where the issues lie with young people. So after they get out of school at 2 o'clock, then they go on to nothing. So if you remember the old saying that an idle mind is the devil's workshop.
Yeah.
So then they begin to come up with their own things. I've worked in the youth field for 14 years now, and I every school vacation, I'll ask young people when they come back, what'd you do while you were off this week? Nothing. And there's a lot of programs that are available, but maybe they're not safe in locations that are safe for these young people.
Yeah.
So, we saw a lot of the programs that were in the housing developments, the community centers close back in 2003 with the DEA dollars being taken away, and when we went to war. All of that stuff plays a valuable role in what's happening today. And those of us who were involved in youth work back then, we signed the petitions to keep them open, and it didn't happen. And now we're seeing the results of that now.
Well, talk to me also about trauma counseling and the lack of trauma counseling.
The lack of, yes. I was actually in a meeting earlier today. Just the fact that I can count on my one hand the amount of people that are out in the community doing this work. There's not enough people.
Yeah.
So, yourself, we walked in the Mother's Day Walk for Peace last year. There were 10,000 people there. Most of the people don't have counseling. I worked at Boston Medical Center, where the majority of the young people in the community go to that health center, and it's just not available. There's long lines waiting for behavioral health counseling, and we need to have that all throughout the city. Every health center should offer some sort of counseling because of the impact of violence. I was a substance abuse counselor, and I talked to so many young people who were self-medicating because of that grief, and you see it yourself in your field.
Absolutely.
So it's something that's very necessary.
So Pamela, let me ask you this. When I'm out talking to folks, particularly from my perch as a public official and an elected public official, one of the things that I often say to people is that one of the main tenets to me of why the vote is important is because we are the lobbyists for citizens. Right. We are the lobbyists. I mean, every other product and every other initiative out there has a lobbyist.
Right.
People need to have lobbyists. That's where I believe elected officials come in. When you're talking to folks about the need to register to vote, what do you talk to them about? How do you inspire them, or how do you get them to understand the significance of voting?
Well, I would just want to take a step back, and you had talked about civic education and the lack of, I experienced that too as a young person. So one thing that we are working on at Boston League, we actually have a voter registration, voter education pilot. Nice. That
in the schools, or
that we are implementing in the schools with the school administrators that are interested in working with us. It's a volunteer effort. It doesn't cost anything. We tested it out, one aspect of it with Boston Latin School. During the mayoral forum, a lot of people didn't like lots of candidates, but we loved the fact that there were lots of candidates.
I was about to say, there were a lot of candidates.
12 candidates.
Right.
We had 12 candidates, but we worked with 17 students. So we worked with the Ward Fellows.
Okay.
And the Ward Fellows were Boston Latin School students, and there were 17. And the students were assigned to the candidates. They researched the candidates. This has started last spring. They researched the candidates, they interviewed the candidates, some even did videotape interviews of the candidates.
Okay.
And so then what I did is I helped the administration work with a volunteer effort and a wonderful fellow from Boston Latin School, our first Boston League of Women Voters fellow, to facilitate the forum. And actually Cindy came to the forum so she could talk about the forum.
Alma mater.
So we did a classroom, that's right, Cindy's a Boston Latin School alum,
not
just
surprised.
happened to be. So it was a classroom forum, it's very different. So it was through this experience, and it was creative. So we don't tell you how to do it. We don't say, oh, English high school, this is how you do it. We just say, okay, twice a year, let's create a volunteer effort. The League of Women Voters will help you with the voter registration. And I just happen to have a lot of experience in doing these kinds of things in media. And you know how, that's an integral part of it.
Totally.
So just helping the students learn not only about how to critically evaluate the candidates, but also how to put on a forum by themselves.
So what was the takeaway on the students' part?
It was it was a historical moment in their lives. I said, you may not realize this, but this is a great opportunity. It had been, 20-something years since we had a mayoral race?
Right.
So here they were, juniors and seniors in high school, having this opportunity to learn about the process. But I will say this, what upset me was the fact that most of the students that I spoke with who were ready to go on to these wonderful colleges, you know, all brilliant students, they didn't really have the education or the knowledge about how a politician would run for office, how campaigns work, how to critically evaluate a candidate. So through this wonderful experience, Boston Latin School was interested in working with us again on perhaps a gubernatorial forum, but it was a classroom forum. And Cindy was there, so she was someone in the audience, and you know, of course, it wasn't perfect. You know, we could improve on it, but that was just a sample of what we could do across the city.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I think that it's great to do it in Latin, but I'd love to see something like that happen in Madison or one of these other schools that, you know, where the kids may know even less about the political process, whose families may not have been even close to as civically engaged as some of the kids at the Latin school, you know. And so that would be my challenge, if I could, to you folks to say, look at a school like Madison or one of the other schools, you know, that's principally populated by kids of color that may not have had any introduction to that system. So I think it's highly, highly important, you know. Now, when you're doing the Peace Boston initiative, when you're furthering that, what else do you bring together to complement that? I know you have a basketball tournament or some other sports activities that you get around these kids as you're talking about the need to be safe. Talk to me about what the other things that you do.
So a lot of the programming that we have, we put on big events for young people, and it's always something fun. It has nothing to do with promoting peace. So, for example, in the past, we've done the Beantown Bounce. We work with the producers of that event, which was a huge dance competition. In the middle of it, we'll stop the event and do a promotion on peace and just talk about it and ask the young people to stand if they've lost somebody to violence. With 5,000 people in the audience to see, probably 90% of them stand, you know. That's a powerful message. And then just talk to them about ways that they can assist in the process so that it's not an event, like I said, focusing on peace where they may not come to that. So right now, we formed the Peace Collaborative so that we could work together to create a year-long calendar of events for young people. And we're going to put together one event with all of the organizations raising the money for this particular event. It's the Got Peace basketball tournament. And we'll have young people playing against DJs and radio DJs and the artists. And this year we want to do an elected officials team. And they had such a good time bragging about how they beat the adults. But it just, it's bridging the gap, you know, showing the generations that you can get along with adults and you can have a relationship with us, that you can feel comfortable in talking to us. Because one of the things that I've found in my experience as a youth worker or managing youth programs is that there's not a lot of trust that young people have with adults. So I think that once they see how cool we are, you know,
we are cool.
We are very cool.
Yes, right.
So, you know, we also used to put on a lot of concerts. You remember the Start Peace video that took place?
Yep.
So we put on a lot of concerts that promoted peace, and for them to see their favorite rappers, their local rappers, promoting peace messages through song, that was a strong component there too. So.
Well, you know, to that end, back in 2005, I began a program at the Sheriff's Department called the Choice Program. And in its essence, what we do is we send officers into the schools, starting with the middle schools, not only to talk about public safety, but what I wanted to do is to have youth interact with adults in uniform when they weren't in trouble. You know, because oftentimes, particularly in urban centers, kids are only interacting with adults in uniform when there's some sort of crisis situation going on. So I say that as a prelude to say that I know you're playing against the DJs and elected officials, which I think is risky for elected officials in an election year.
If they don't have
Good luck to you. Right. Good luck to you on that one. But going down the road as you do this, we'd love to have them play against corrections officers. You know, have them come in and play when you talk about that contact, you know, between youth and adults, you know, in a friendly environment. That whole issue around public safety. Now, I know the DA does a basketball tournament, but, you know, we can get the police and the DA and the officers and, you know, parole and probation, the whole gamut
That
of
could
us
be the team.
in public safety, you know, to be involved in this initiative. Because I think
Sounds
that's
great.
really important. So it's something we can talk about offline. Pamela, tell me, what do you folks do between election cycles? So when although it seems like we're having an election in this state, you know, every other week.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It seems to be, well, Cindy and I mean, this is why we're in solidarity. I'm a member of the Peace Collaborative as well.
Oh, okay,
so what
great.
we're doing, like, for example, Lipstick just had a great press conference.
And tell the folks what lipstick
Yeah.
is.
Well, I'll let
Tell the
Cindy
folks
do
what
that.
lipstick is.
Ladies involved in putting a stop to inner city killing. So they just introduced their campaign today, which will be featured on the MBTA, all the buses and trains. So
And the campaign is anti-violence.
with
Okay,
women
okay.
and their role in holding guns for men, and you know, telling them that, you know, we can rise above that. So.
Yeah.
Right. You
yeah.
don't have to get involved and the risks. So Cindy and I actually attended one of their workshops.
Okay.
So what I had offered is to offer voter registration at the workshop. So to sort of integrate the voter registration, voter education piece with the Peace Collaborative, and which is something new, but it's something that we need to do. We're trying to build community, so we don't operate. Cindy was like, people are operating in silos,
Yeah.
and I love the idea of a collaboration. And actually, City Councilor Ayanna Presley talked about we need to solve problems by working together,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
rather than in silos, or just this sort of reactionary, terrible situation, you know, when someone is killed from a violent act. So in between elections, the most important part, this is what I said to young people, and you know, I'm a politician too, so and I get the whole, I'm running for office and you need to do your rhetoric and your speech and to inspire people to vote for you because
exactly.
you believe in your community. But the most important part is after the election, to stay civically engaged
right.
and connected so you can establish excellent working relationships. Like you said, when you go out into the schools, establish relationships with young people so they see you not as just someone, we have to be worried about. No, we're going to have a relationship with you so then we can learn how we can work together to solve problems. In between elections is really more important than the election time because we need to vote for individuals that we know will represent us after the election.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
the
I said
important
to the
thing.
young people.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I know, well, you know, some of the young people were saying, well, that person's never going to make it. And I said, wait a minute. I know you don't think we live in a democracy, but, and you know, we live in a political world now where we have the two political parties, right? Even though we have other parties, and often the Democrats will choose their candidate, you know, no matter who's running. And, you know, so we live sort of in an unfair atmosphere.
Yeah.
So this was a good exercise because that way, and that's what we do at the League, we don't support candidates. We're neutral.
Right.
So we will offer you equal time to make your case as to why you would like to represent your constituents in whatever capacity. And so then young people can ask the questions rather than just having, you know, a radio personality ask the same question. So, I mean, I think that classroom experience spoke to that
Yeah.
at Boston Latin School.
You mentioned lipstick. Talk to me about young ladies, particularly those that are finding their way, unfortunately, into my system. Do you see that there's a rise in criminality amongst young ladies, whether or not they're doing these straw purchases for boyfriends or holding guns for boyfriends or muling drugs, either for boyfriends or for themselves? Do you find that the young ladies are getting kind of pulled into this arena of criminality or not?
I believe so, because I've been involved since the 90s, and just to see the girls back then who may have been holding the guns for their boyfriends who are now holding their own guns.
Right.
So, you know, I remember the forum that you put on with Sheriff Cabral with the hand that rocks
Right,
the cradle.
exactly,
You know,
a couple
and
years back.
that was quite a few years back, and we're still seeing it on the rise. And to see young ladies being killed because of whatever is happening right now, I think that we really need to increase our primary prevention.
I'd ask both of you to say this. Talk to me, talk to the camera, but what would you say, you know, we'll go with the voter the need for more voter registration. And I want to start with you on the public safety end of things. What is it that you want to see from legislators?
I'd like for them to back, like I said, the primary prevention, because a lot of times we try to arrest our way out of the problem. And I know, having been involved unknowingly in the 90s, we were in the music industry and we provided alternatives to violence. So that's my thing now, is that maybe back then we didn't realize what we were doing, but when you give these young people something else to do, and I think that that's always the last place that we look. There's never enough funding for anything. I mean, we've gone down to protests against the budget hearings for years. And, you know, you can't keep telling young people that there's not enough money for jobs and, you know, and that sort of thing, because then they find their own way of making money, and it's always something negative.
And Pamela, what would you say to legislators?
Yeah. What I would say is that to work vigorously to fund, and whether it's through public funding or a public-private partnership, alternatives to violence. I mean, it's a very complicated issue. It's not just about gun control, and it's not about putting more police on the streets. It's about providing a safe environment for young people and their families, so we're not worried about, you know, walking home and whether or not we're going to make it to the other side, and to provide opportunities for young people so they can improve their lives, that they will have other choices. And that's what I hear, is that young people they don't have the choices. They don't have choices about what they're going to do after school or in the summertime. They need to have activities.
Okay. Now, if folks want more information about your organization, how do they get more information?
They can email us at peaceboston@gmail.com.
Okay, and Pamela?
And you can look on our website, LeagueOfWomenVotersBoston.org, and we're also on Facebook. Or you can just Google my name, Pamela Julian. You know, we're transparent now. Okay, cool. Pamela Julian, and I'll get in touch with you. We're looking for volunteers to help with the voter registration, voter education pilot on not just high school campuses, but also college campuses in Boston.
And this is going to be a big year with all of the constitutional offices, the state senate, state reps. So everybody's out there, short of the mayor and the city councilors. Everybody else is running this year, so it's going to be a big year. Well, ladies, look, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate the information. It's been a real blast, and we'd love to have you back.
Sure.
Either in the summer or in the fall. You know, when around the time that your basketball thing gets going, and around the time when, you know, right after Labor Day, when things really get hot and heavy with the campaigns.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, that's it for today. We've had a blast. A lot of good information. We're out of time. We're out of here. We'll be back again next week, and so until then, you take care of yourself. Peace.